There is a kind of unease we do not talk about enough. It does not come with sirens or breakdowns. It does not announce itself loudly. It is quieter than that. It sounds like success on the surface, but it feels like something is off underneath. It feels like being surrounded by people, yet feeling a deep sense of isolation. Like checking off boxes, yet never feeling done. Like smiling at the right times, but rarely feeling joy. You are not falling apart, but you are not fully there either. You are just functioning. And that might be the most dangerous place of all. Because when you are broken, at least you know something needs to change. But when you are performing well enough to fool the world, maybe even to fool yourself, that is when it becomes harder to hear the truth. And what is the truth? You may be walking the wrong path. Not because you made some catastrophic decision, but because, little by little, you drifted. You said yes when you meant no. You stayed silent when you wanted to speak. You pursued what others wanted for you, thinking that if you just went far enough down that road, fulfillment would eventually catch up. But it never did. And now, here you are, looking successful, functioning, checked minus in, but quietly asking, is this it? This is where many people stop. They brush the question aside. They distract. They scroll. They convince themselves it is just a phase. Just stress. Just fatigue. They change their diet, their routine, their phone wallpaper, hoping something external will fix what they feel. Deeply and quietly is no longer aligned. But the Stoics taught us something different. They taught us that when discomfort arises not as a scream, but as a whisper that is not something to escape, that is something to listen to. Because the body knows, the soul knows. And while the mind can rationalize anything, the heart cannot lie. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. But how can you revoke a judgment if you do not even realize you made one? That is what this episode is for. It is not a lecture. It is a mirror. A slow, steady, sometimes uncomfortable look into 12 subtle signs, 12 warnings that you may be drifting. Not running toward your life, but away from it. Not living in alignment, but in performance. Not waking up with clarity, but with quiet resignation. And if you stay with me until the end, you will not just learn to name these signals. You will learn to respond to them. You will learn to walk yourself back step by step to the version of you who no longer trades peace for productivity or soul for survival or authenticity for applause. You will leave this journey with practical clarity, with tools to recognize when something inside is pulling you off center, with language for the heaviness you have been carrying but could not name. And more than that, you will walk away with permission. Permission to stop pretending that just because it looks right, it feels right. Permission to pause, to pivot, to return. Because life is not about getting it perfect. It is about getting clear. And clarity always begins with honesty. So, let us begin there. Ask yourself, when was the last time I said yes because I wanted to, not because I felt obligated? When was the last time I chose rest not as a reward, but as a right? When was the last time I looked at my life not through the eyes of society, or status, or expectation, but through the quiet, personal lens of truth? If it has been a while, you are not failing. You are forgetting. Forgetting who you are underneath the roles you play. Forgetting what matters underneath the metrics you chase. Forgetting how to feel underneath how to function. This is not a crisis. This is a checkpoint. And every warning sign you will hear in this episode, it is not a condemnation. It is a compass. Because being off track is not the end. It is the beginning if you are willing to listen. Seneca once said, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. This is your chance to check your map. To check your direction not based on how fast you are moving, but on whether where you are going is where you want to arrive. Because drifting is subtle, and by the time you feel completely lost, it is not because you made one wrong turn. It is because you stopped listening. So listen now, not to me, but to yourself. Listen beneath the noise, beneath the performance, beneath the productivity. And if something in you says, this isn't quite it, good. That means you are awake. That means something in you still knows. And if you stay present through this whole journey, through all 12 warnings, you will begin to remember. You will remember who you were before the drift, before the performance, before the self-minus abandonment that the world called success. And from that remembering you will rise. Not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, like someone who has stopped running and started returning. You feel busy but deeply unfulfilled. Your calendar is full. Your inbox is never empty. Your notifications light up like you matter. People need you. Deadlines await you. Projects move through your hands like a conveyor belt, and for a moment, it feels like motion, like progress, like proof that you are doing well. But late at night, when the noise quiets and the doing stops, something else begins to speak. I whisper. An ache. A question that cannot be answered by another checked minus off task. Why does none of this feel like enough? This is not exhaustion from overwork. It is the emptiness of working without meaning. And it is one of the first signs that you may be moving quickly but in the wrong direction. You are not lazy. You are disconnected. Disconnected from the why behind the what. From the soul inside the structure. From the intention beneath the routine. The Stoics warned us about this trap long ago. Seneca said being busy is not the same as being productive. And Marcus Aurelius went further. Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others, unless it is for some mutual benefit. Avoid all other such aimless thoughts, and instead focus on what nature demands of you now. But modern life glorifies business. We confuse movement with momentum. We confuse productivity with purpose. And over time we stop asking the one question that actually matters: is this even mine? Is this goal yours, or was it handed to you? Is this job a reflection of your values, or just a place where you hide from them? Are these routines helping you remember who you are, or just helping you forget faster? And the hardest part? From the outside, it looks like you are doing great. People say you are killing it. You are so productive. You are always on the move. But inside you feel like you are losing touch with yourself. You have built momentum, yes, but at what cost? Your mornings are rushed. Your conversations are shallow. Your rest feels stolen, not earned. You are doing, always doing, but rarely being. And it is easy to ignore because it does not hurt right away. The pain comes slowly. It builds like fog. Not enough to make you panic. Just enough to blur the road. Until one day you realize you have no idea why you are still running. That realization, that is not weakness. That is awakening. And if you are feeling that right now, if you feel the gap between how busy you are and how empty you feel, that is not something to cover up with more effort. That is something to explore. Ask yourself, what am I building? Who is it for? Who do I become if I keep doing this for another year or 10? And if the answers disturb you, good. That means your soul is still online. It means you have not given up completely. It means you can return, not to laziness, not to passivity, but to intentionality. Because the goal was never to do more. It was to do what matters. So start small. Before the next yes, pause. Before the next task, ask why. Before the next sprint, ask if you are even running towards something that's yours. This is not about abandoning your work. It is about reclaiming it. About reconnecting to the version of you who once had reasons, not just routines. And if you have lost that connection, you can rebuild it. With silence. With space. With simple reflection. Because your soul does not need grand gestures. It just needs your attention. Give it that. Even now. Even in the middle of your busy life. Even for one breath, one moment, one honest sentence. This is not working anymore. And from there, you begin again. Not with panic, but with presence. Because the most important work you will ever do is not in your tasks. It is in your truth. You are always connected but feel increasingly alone. Your phone is always within reach. Your inbox is full. Your group chats are active. You scroll past hundreds of faces. You respond with hearts, thumbs minus up, laughing emoji, IS. From the outside, it looks like you are part of something. From the screen, it looks like you are surrounded. But inside, you feel like a ghost. A participant in everything, but fully present in nothing. This is not isolation in the traditional sense. This is a different kind of loneliness. It is not the absence of people, it is the absence of presence. You talk often, but you rarely speak. You respond fast, but you rarely connect. And you start to wonder, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel so unseen when I am always available? But nothing is wrong with you. What is wrong is the illusion that availability equals connection. The Stoics warned us long before smartphones, you must build up your life action by action, Marcus Aurelius wrote, and be satisfied if each one achieves its goal as far as possible, and no one can keep you from this. But how do you build anything when your attention is fragmented? How do you know what your soul needs when you never stop listening to everyone else? Because the more you stay on, the more you drift out. Out of alignment. Out of silence. Out of depth. And slowly, without even realizing it, you stop knowing how to be with yourself. You reach for your phone the moment things get quiet. You open a tab when the task gets hard. You refresh, you reply, you scroll. But you rarely reflect. And the cost? You stop being your own companion. You outsource your presence. You fill the space that was meant for you with updates, opinions, distraction. And yet the body knows. You feel it in your restlessness. In your inability to sit still without grabbing something. In the way you feel more drained after an hour of social media than an hour of solitude. Because your nervous system is overstimulated but undernourished. You have connection but no depth. You have information but no integration. You are plugged in but you are not present. And it hurts. But you hide it. Because no one wants to admit that loneliness can live inside a phone full of names. That you can feel most alone while surrounded by people who like you. But you can. And you do. And that is your warning. Not that you are broken, but that you are disconnected from yourself. So how do you return? You disconnect to reconnect. Not forever. Not dramatically. Just intentionally. You put the phone down not as punishment, but as invitation. You walk without music not because sound is bad, but because silence has something to say. You go somewhere without posting not to prove anything, but to experience it fully. And most of all, use it with yourself. With your thoughts. With your restlessness. With your boredom. Until the signal beneath the noise begins to reappear. That signal. It is you. Your intuition. Your real voice. Your felt sense of truth. And when you start listening to that voice again, you will begin to feel less alone. Because you will have returned to your own side. And once you are back on your own side, no amount of silence can scare you. No absence can shake you. Because connection will no longer be something you seek to fill a void. It will be something you bring from a place of fullness. That is Stoic presence. Not avoidance of the world, but rootedness within it. So be rooted again. Even if it means going quiet for a while. Even if it means missing some things. Because what you gain is far more rare. Yourself. You keep achieving but feel further from yourself. The goals get checked off. The titles accumulate. The numbers grow, followers, income, influence. And at first, it feels good. Progress is seductive. It gives you something tangible to hold. Something to point to when people ask, "How are you doing?" But in the quiet moments there is a strange hollowness. Like the more you accomplish, the less you recognize the person doing the accomplishing. Like the identity you have built is polished, efficient, impressive. But not true. Not to the deepest parts of you. Not to the quiet values that got lost in the noise of pursuit. And that is the ache no one talks about. The subtle grief of becoming what the world rewards while slowly forgetting who you were before the world had an opinion. This is not failure. It is a split. A slow widening gap between achievement and authenticity. And if you feel that tension, then you are being asked to remember something. Not to stop striving, but to return to why you started. Because goals without grounding become traps. Success without reflection becomes ego. And performance without principle becomes exhaustion. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, constantly reminded himself not to get lost in his rule. "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculation," he wrote. "Instead, be concerned with how you spend your present moment in alignment with your values." He had access to everything. But he knew the outer empire means nothing if the inner self is abandoned. So ask yourself now, what part of you is being sacrificed for your success? What principle have you softened just to be more likable? What boundary have you blurred just to move faster? What truth have you silenced just to seem agreeable? These are not judgmental questions. They are centering questions. Because sometimes, the more you win, the more you wander. Not outwardly, inwardly. You wander away from simplicity, from honesty, from soul. And the longer you wander, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before the chase began. That memory, it matters. Because it is not just nostalgia. It is a signal, a compass. It points you not backward but inward. Back to the version of you who wanted depth more than applause. Presence more than performance. Peace more than popularity. That version of you, he still lives inside. He is not disappointed in your ambition. He is just wondering when you will come home. So how do you return? You pause. You reflect. You write not about what you are doing, but about why you are doing it. You ask, if I stripped away the metrics, the milestones, the praise, would I still choose this path? Would I still respect the person I am becoming? And if the answer is unclear, do not panic. Just listen. Because sometimes the call back to yourself does not come with lightning. It comes with restlessness. That restlessness you feel, it is not a problem. It is a compass. And if you follow it not by abandoning everything, but by realigning, you will find something deeper than success. You will find center. And from center, you will build again. Not for applause, but for peace. Not for image, but for integrity. That is Stoic achievement. Not the absence of ambition, but ambition that answers to principle. And principle, that is something no title can ever give you. It is something you give yourself. When you remember who you are, and choose to become it again, you feel emotionally reactive even to small things. A short delay sends your heart racing. A text with the wrong tone ruins your mood. Traffic, a missed call, a misunderstood comment, it all hits harder than it should. You are not dramatic. You are drained. Because reactivity is not about weakness. It is about imbalance. It is a warning that your inner space is overcrowded, overstimulated, undernourished. And when that space is not protected, even the smallest spark feels like fire. You do not mean to snap, but you do. You do not mean to shut down, but you do. And afterward, you feel it, the guilt, the confusion, the quiet shame of knowing that reaction was bigger than the moment. The Stoics saw this not as failure, but as signal. They believed emotional reactivity was a symptom not of the moment, but of the mindset. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But how do you reclaim that power when it feels like the smallest things control you? You start not by suppressing the emotion, but by slowing it down. Most people explode or implode. The Stoic observes, he does not deny the anger. He does not act on it either. He notices it. He gives it space. And in that space, he chooses a response, not a reaction. This is not natural. This is trained. And if you feel reactive right now, it is not because you are broken. It is because you have been living externally. Your attention, your energy, your identity scattered across too many tabs, too many expectations, too many unresolved thoughts. And when the system is that strained, even a small glitch can crash it. So do not shame yourself. Return to center. How? With breath, with boundaries, with a brutal audit of what is taking your peace in exchange for nothing. Because peace is not found in controlling everything around you. It is found in learning how to hold yourself when things are not controllable. And most of life is not controllable. This is what the Stoics trained for. They trained for insult, for chaos, for betrayal. Not because they wanted it, but because they knew emotional freedom is not built when things go smoothly. It is built when you can remain stable even when things fall apart. That starts small. When the email is late. When your partner says the wrong thing. When someone cuts you off on the road. Pause. Not forever. Just long enough to interrupt the automatic script. Just long enough to breathe instead of bite. Just long enough to ask what response honors my character. Because once you see your emotions as not as dictators, you stop obeying them blindly. You start working with them. Anger becomes insight. Sadness becomes a signal. Frustration becomes feedback. And from there, you do not lose your edge. You sharpen it. Because now, your energy is no longer being leaked in reaction. It is being channeled into action. Measured. Intentional. Grounded. That is Stoic composure. Not emotionals. Emotionally mastered. So if you feel like you are always on edge, do not try to fix the world. Fix your foundation. Return to your practices. Sleep. Stillness. Clarity of values. Simplicity of routine. These are not luxuries. They are anchors. And when you are anchored, small things stay small. And you? You stay you. Even in the storm. You constantly compare yourself to others even when you know better. You scroll. You see someone winning. Someone rising faster. Sharper. Happier. Louder. And before you can catch it, something in you contracts. Not because you hate them, but because you feel behind. You were feeling fine a moment ago. But now, you are doubting again. Not because anything changed in your life, but because you peeked into someone else's and forgot how to look at your own. This is not weakness. This is a sign that you have been spending more time observing than embodying. More time watching life than living it. The Stoics saw this as poison to the soul. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Translation: stop measuring your life by someone else's scale. Because here is what you forget. You are not behind. You are not ahead. You are on your path. And the path has no scoreboard. There is no universal ranking system for peace. No gold medal for alignment. But comparison makes you forget that. It convinces you that someone else's moment is proof you are late to yours. That someone else's voice invalidates your silence. That someone else's confidence exposes your doubt. But it does not. Their journey is theirs. Your journey is yours. And no amount of comparison will ever change that. What it will do is drain you of gratitude, of clarity, of the momentum you need to stay focused on your own lane. Because comparison is not just a distraction. It is a detour. It pulls you out of your values and into validation, out of your purpose and into performance, out of your rhythm and into restlessness. And the worst part? You already know it is irrational. But you still scroll, still watch, still measure. Not because you enjoy the pain, but because your identity has not been anchored in something deeper than visibility. That anchoring? That is your work now. And it begins with attention. Ask yourself, when do I compare? What do I believe in that moment? And what am I forgetting? You are forgetting that every time you look outward for worth, you lose connection with the only thing that ever mattered: who you are becoming. And who you are becoming, that cannot be seen on a feed. That cannot be ranked. That cannot be hurried. It must be lived. Through the quiet. Through the discipline. Through the moments no one sees. That is where your real life is unfolding. And if you keep interrupting it to check how someone else's is going, you will never feel peace. Not because you are not enough, but because you are not present. So come back. Turn the mirror inward. Ask not, are they ahead, but am I aligned? Ask not, do they like me, but do I respect me? Ask not, what do they have, but what do I truly need? And when you do, you will begin to remember. Remember what you value. Remember what you stand for. Remember what truly makes your life worth living. And in that remembering, comparison fades. Because now, you are not watching someone else's highlight reel. You are living your own real one. Fully. Quietly. Powerfully. On your own terms. You keep betraying your boundaries just to keep the peace. You say yes when you mean no. You stay quiet when your truth is screaming. You extend yourself just a little further, stay a little longer, tolerate just a little more, until one day, you are not sure where your limits went. You are not even sure what your limits are. You are not weak. You are simply tired of being too much. So you shrink. You soften your edges. You smile through the discomfort. And you tell yourself you are doing it to keep the peace. But what kind of peace comes from betraying yourself? The Stoics never confused peace with avoidance. Peace to them was not the absence of conflict, it was the presence of integrity. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." And one of the greatest trials you will ever face is the trial of holding your boundaries when no one else likes them. Because the truth is, your boundaries will disappoint people. They will trigger them. They will expose their own lack of boundaries. And that exposure, it makes them uncomfortable. So they push back. They guilt you. They question your intentions. They may even accuse you of being selfish, cold, or distant. But here is what Stoicism teaches you. Better to be momentarily misunderstood by others than permanently disconnected from yourself. Because every time you betray your boundary to avoid discomfort, you trade short -term approval for long -term erosion. And erosion does not announce itself loudly. It shows up in small ways. In the way your body tightens before conversation. In the way you avoid certain people even though you keep saying yes. In the way your resentment builds in silence until one day it spills out in a way you regret. That is not just stress. That is your soul saying, this is not who I want to be. And that moment of recognition, that is sacred. Because it means you still care. It means your inner compass still works. It just needs practice again. So practice. Say no without an essay. Let people be disappointed. Let them misunderstand you. Let the silence sit there without rushing to fill it with justification. Because your job is not to manage how others feel about your truth. Your job is to speak it. With clarity. With calm. Without apology. That is not cruelty. That is clarity. And clarity is the foundation of real peace. Not the kind that depends on everyone being happy. The kind that depends on you being whole. Because every time you say yes, from fear you shrink. Every time you tolerate what breaks your spirit, you fracture. Every time you avoid discomfort to make others comfortable, you abandon your own ground. And abandonment, repeated often enough, becomes identity. You start to believe you are the flexible one, the easygoing one, the one who never complains. But under that identity lives exhaustion. Exhaustion from carrying everyone else's expectations while ignoring your own needs. Exhaustion from being agreeable at the cost of being real. And that cost, it is too high. Because no amount of external peace is worth the price of internal war. So choose the opposite. Choose to return to yourself. Choose to disappoint others if it means staying true. Choose to draw the line not with force, but with firmness. Because you are not here to be soft for everyone else's comfort. You are here to be solid so that the people who truly value you can stand beside something real. That is what boundaries do. They do not push love away. They protect it. They protect you. Your energy. Your sanity. Your soul. And you? You are no longer available for self-betrayal. Not because you are better than anyone, but because you finally remembered peace built on suppression is not peace. It is performance. And you? You are done performing. You are ready to live. Fully. Clearly. Unapologetically. You are always doing but rarely feel present. You wake up with a task list already ticking inside your head. Before your feet hit the floor, you are planning, scheduling, replying. You go from one thing to the next: emails, errands, workouts, meetings, calls. You tell yourself it is discipline, responsibility, momentum. And maybe it is. But underneath the movement is a quiet disconnection. You are living your life, but you are not in your life. You are there physically, but mentally. You are always one step ahead or one step behind. Never where your feet are. Never fully here. And you feel it. In your relationships. You hear the words, but do not absorb them. You nod, but your mind is elsewhere. You spend time together, but it passes like scenery from a train window. You feel it in your rest. You lie down, but your brain is still working. You take breaks, but they feel more like pauses between tasks than nourishment. You even feel it in moments that are supposed to be joyful. Vacations, achievements, celebrations. You are there, but your mind is narrating, analyzing, recording. Trying to hold it instead of simply being in it. This is not your fault. It is how the modern world trains us. To move faster. To be productive. To measure life in outputs, results, visibility. But the Stoics challenged this. They knew a life without presence is no life at all. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, confine yourself to the present. Not as a philosophy. As a practice. Because presence is not a concept. It is a muscle. and most of us have let it atrophy. We train our bodies. We train our minds. But our attention, it is scattered, pulled in 1,000 directions. And then we wonder why peace feels distant. It is not because we are doing too much. It is because we are never in what we are doing. We are in the next moment, the next concern, the next scroll. And as a result, life passes through us, but never into us. So how do you return? How do you rebuild the muscle of presence? Start where you are. When you eat, just eat. No scrolling. No rushing. Taste. Chew. Slow down. When someone speaks, listen. Not to reply. To understand. To meet them fully with your attention. When you work. One task. Fully. With rhythm. Not to finish. To focus. When you walk, feel your feet. Breathe with them. Let your breath remind your body, I am here. These are small shifts, but they are revolutionary. Because the person who controls their attention controls their life. Not through force, but through return. That is all presence seeks a return. Over and over. Back to the breath. Back to the task. Back to the moment. Not perfectly, but persistently. Because every time you return, you reclaim something the world tries to take. Your experience of being alive. Because what good is a full calendar if you are absent from all of it? What good is a beautiful sunset if your mind is in tomorrow's inbox? What good is a meaningful relationship if you are too distracted to feel it? Presence is not about slowing down your life. It is about inhabiting it. And when you inhabit it fully, everything deepens. Not because the moment changes, but because you do. You are no longer floating. You are grounded. You are no longer split. You are whole. That is Stoic living. Not the absence of effort, the integration of it. So return. Right now. Feel your breath. Notice your surroundings. Slow your thoughts. And choose again to be here. Because here is where everything real happens. And you? You are ready to live again. Not just move, but live. You ignore your intuition because logic sounds safer. There is a voice in you that speaks without shouting. It does not argue. It does not try to convince. It simply knows. It shows up as an instinct, a tension, a quiet pause before the decision. You feel it, but you push it aside. Because the numbers do not support it. Because your friends do not agree with it. Because it does not make sense on paper. So you choose the logical route. The one that looks right. Sounds smart. Fits into what the world applauds. And for a while, it works. But then the voice returns. Not to scold. To remind. That you can justify a decision with 1,000 reasons. And still be moving further from yourself. Because logic without alignment is not wisdom. It is just a dressed minus up version of fear. The Stoics taught us to honor reason. But their version of reason was not just intellectual, it was moral. It was tied to virtue, to inner clarity, to what they called right action. And right action is not always rational in the conventional sense. Sometimes it asks you to walk away from a job that pays well but steals your soul. Sometimes it asks you to say no to a relationship that is stable but leaves you empty. Sometimes it asks you to take a step into the unknown not because you are certain, but because you are called. That calling? It is intuition. And no, it is not always comfortable. But it is honest. And honesty, the Stoics knew, is the root of all peace. Because you can fool others. You can even fool your mind. But you cannot fool the body. The body knows. That tightness in your chest before you say yes. That is your intuition saying no. That restlessness you feel in a room full of people? That is your soul asking for deeper company. That fatigue that lingers even after 8 hours of sleep. That is the exhaustion of self minus abandonment. But here is the challenge. The more you live in logic alone, the quieter your intuition becomes. Not because it is gone, because you have stopped listening. You have trained yourself to prioritize proof over presence, to follow what is safe over what is true. And truth, it does not always come with a blueprint. It comes with resonance, a feeling of relief, a deep breath that says, yes, this is mine. That is what you are returning to now. Not blind emotion, but embodied knowing. The kind that arises not from fear or fantasy, but from deep, lived clarity. So ask yourself, where have I been rationalizing something I already know is wrong? Where have I talked myself out of a decision that felt aligned because I could not explain it? Where have I silenced my knowing just to be reasonable? These are not comfortable questions, but they are liberating ones. Because the moment you stop negotiating with your truth, you start living from it. And when you do, you stop needing everyone to understand. You stop needing the data to align perfectly. You stop waiting for permission, because your body already said go. Your soul already whispered this is the way. Now you just have to follow. With courage, with clarity, with the discipline to stay even when doubt comes knocking. And it will. Doubt always comes. But so does strength. So does alignment. So does the quiet power of a life lived in accordance with your own values, not just your own fears. That is Stoic wisdom. Not the suppression of emotion, but the integration of logic and conscience, reason and intuition. So you do not just live smart. You live right. And right for you may not make sense to anyone else. It does not have to. It just has to be true. You no longer feel proud of how you show up. You are doing the right things. You are keeping the peace. You are showing up where you are supposed to. From the outside, no one would suspect anything is wrong. But you feel it. You feel it when you walk out of a conversation and replay what you did not say. You feel it when you smile in a room that feels false. You feel it when you compromise just enough to keep things moving, but inside, something in you contracts. You are not failing. You are fading. Fading from the version of you who once stood taller, spoke clearer, moved with intention, not just inertia. It does not happen all at once. It happens in tiny, unspoken negotiations. I will let this slide. I will wait to say something next time. I will just go along with it this once. And then one day you look at the way you move through the world and something feels off. Not broken. Just not yours anymore. This is a sign. Not that you are weak, but that you are out of alignment. And alignment is not about perfection. It is about congruence between what you believe and how you behave. Between what you value and how you act. Between what you know is true and what you actually say, do, embody. The Stoics were obsessed with this. Epictetus said, know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. That is not about fashion. It is about form, about how you show up, how you carry your name, your tone, your silence, your decisions. When those stop feeling like you, the body feels it first. You get irritated, exhausted, disconnected. Not because you are doing too much, but because you are doing things that require you to leave yourself behind. That disconnection? That is the root of restlessness. Not external stress, but internal split. And the only way back is honesty. Ask yourself, what part of my behavior no longer reflects who I am becoming? What version of me am I keeping alive just to maintain peace? Who do I become when I stay silent? What part of me dies a little every time I ignore that inner nudge? These are not questions for judgment. They are invitations to return. Because you know what pride feels like. You have tasted it. It is not arrogance. It is not ego. It is quiet clarity. The kind that says, I like who I was in that room. I stood in my values even if my voice shook. I walked away even when I wanted to be liked. That kind of pride, it does not need applause. It just needs witness. From you. Because the deepest form of self minus respect is self minus recognition. To look at how you handled something and know that was mine. That was real. That was right. So if you have lost that feeling, if you no longer feel proud of how you are showing up, this is not the end. It is the prompt. A gentle reminder to return. To adjust. To realign. Not by changing the world, by changing your presence in it. It starts in the next moment, the next sentence, the next boundary, the next decision you make, not for comfort, but for congruence. Because nothing feels as good as standing in yourself again. Nothing restores peace faster than acting from integrity. And once you start to feel that again, everything shifts. The room does not have to agree. The result does not have to be perfect. You just have to be true. And truth? Truth always fits. Even when it is uncomfortable. Even when it costs you. Because it never costs you more than the quiet take of not being able to respect the person you see in the mirror. So begin again. Proudly. Quietly. Clearly. You feel like you are performing more than living. You smile at the right moments. You say what is expected. You know how to adjust your tone, your timing, your energy depending on who is in the room. You have mastered the art of being on. And it works. You are liked. Accepted. Sometimes even praised. But deep down, something feels hollow. Because behind the smile is effort. Behind the confidence is calculation. Behind the calm demeanor is the pressure of holding it all together. You are not being fake. You are just tired of pretending. And what you are pretending is not even a lie. It is just partial. A curated version of you. Polished. Safe. Digestible. The version that fits the room. But what happens when you spend so long performing a role? That you forget who you were before the script. That is where the ache begins. Not pain. Not collapse. Just the quiet grief of self-minus abandonment. The Stoics understood this kind of drift well. They saw it as the enemy of authenticity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in guessing what others are doing and thinking. Be your own master and look to the task in front of you. Because the moment you begin living for the gaze of others, you begin leaving yourself behind. And no matter how good the performance gets, it never feels like peace. Because peace does not come from applause. It comes from alignment. And alignment, it asks you to stop performing. Not everywhere. Not all at once. But slowly. Courageously. Moment by moment. It starts with honesty. Ask yourself, where am I acting? Where am I choosing what looks good over what feels true? Where am I more concerned with being liked than being real? These questions are not easy, because the performance is comfortable. It is predictable. But the cost is you. You stop saying what you mean. You stop asking for what you need. You stop feeling safe being fully seen because you have not even seen yourself in a long time. That is the moment of truth. The moment you realize, this version of me is sustainable, but it is not satisfying. And from that moment, you begin again, not with rebellion, but with realness. You say one true thing today that you would have hidden yesterday. You pause before saying what is expected and ask, what do I actually think? You catch yourself adjusting for approval and you stop. Not because you want to push people away, but because you are done pushing yourself aside. That shift, it is small at first, but it compounds. And over time, the gap between who you are and how you act begins to close. That is when the exhaustion lifts. That is when peace returns. Not because you are perfect, but because you are present in your own life. The Stoics never chased popularity. They chased clarity. They asked one question above all: is this aligned with my character? Not will it look good. Not will they like me. Not will this make me seem strong. Just is this me? You can ask that too. Right now. In every interaction. Every decision. Every role you have been playing for too long. Ask, what would this look like if I stopped performing? And let that answer guide you. Even if it is uncomfortable. Especially then. Because discomfort is not always danger. Sometimes, it is the doorway back to authenticity. And authenticity? That is not branding. That is freedom. And you are ready to be free again. To stop acting. To start living. You are constantly chasing yet rarely arriving. There is always something next. The next milestone. The next project. The next goal that will finally make it all feel worth it. You keep going. Faster. Harder. More focused. More driven. You have become excellent at the pursuit. But somewhere along the way you stopped asking what you are even chasing. You tell yourself it is purpose, or growth, or some higher standard. But deep down it feels like running. Like you are sprinting towards something that keeps moving. A finish line that keeps disappearing the closer you get. And eventually, even the wins begin to feel flat. Because the high never lasts. The satisfaction never lands. The moment passes quickly. And all that remains is a mind already planning the next climb. This is not ambition. This is disconnection. The Stoics warned us about this. They knew that to chase without reflection is to build a life of movement without meaning. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But there is another kind of adversity no one warns us about. The adversity of always arriving late to your own life. Of always being on the way, but never being home. Not in the literal sense, but in the inner sense. At peace. Grounded. Clear. So ask yourself, what am I chasing? And why? Who taught me this was the measure? What do I believe will happen once I finally get there? And what if that there is a moving target? What if the life I am trying to catch was never meant to be caught? That is not failure. That is awakening. Because the goal is not to stop pursuing. The goal is to pursue without losing yourself. To move with clarity, not desperation. To grow with presence, not panic. To want more not because you are empty, but because you are aligned. And that alignment? It starts when you stop chasing a future you hope will rescue you, and start inhabiting the moment you are in. That does not mean you let go of effort. It means you let go of illusion. The illusion that life starts once. Once you get the job. Once you find the person. Once your body looks different. Once your past is perfectly healed. The Stoic knows there is no once. There is only now. And how you meet it. Fully. Courageously. Soberly. So stop. Right now. Breathe. Ask, if nothing changed tomorrow, could I still live today with integrity? And if the answer is no, why? What is missing? And is that thing truly missing, or are you just not present enough to feel it? Because most of what we chase is not what we need. We chase recognition when what we need is self minus respect. We chase security when what we need is self minus trust. We chase arrival when what we need is return. Return to our breath, our values, our bodies, our boundaries, our enoughness. That return? That is the end of the chase. Not because you stop moving, but because you finally remember the point was never the finish line. The point was to walk this path awake. And now you are. You are awake. You see the signs. You have named the warnings. You have remembered what matters. And from here, you do not need to chase anymore. You get to choose. From stillness. From strength. From the deep inner clarity that says, I am no longer living on autopilot. I am no longer building a life that looks good but feels wrong. I am finally home. In myself. In my decisions. In this moment. Fully. Finally. Unshakably.